"Hey, girlfriend, have you done anything with the list yet?" Helen laughed. "Nothing new from the last point," Suze replied. "And don't talk so loudly. You know Dave is working in his office. If he ever finds out about this, it will be heaven and earth." This caused both women to burst out laughing. Suze was my wife for the last 20 years and the mother of our grown daughters, Janet and Edith. Helen has known Suze since school, and I would say she is her best friend. They didn't know it, but I knew where to hide when they started their gossip and stupid moods. The kitchen where their so-called conversations took place was right next to the pantry in my office. Suze always believed that I sealed this space, but something inside me stopped me, thinking that someday in the future I could use it for something useful. I've found this very helpful lately. Useful for eavesdropping on the conversations of my wife and her friends in the kitchen, a place they considered safe to talk. Sometimes I felt bad about this ability, but in the end it was always innocent. I could hear every word, but I must admit that the pace and topics of their conversations, which changed frequently, left me wondering what they were even talking about. This wasn't one of those times. Their conversations about lists were commonplace. You see, Suze was a leaf maniac. She made lists for everything. Literally everything. This was far beyond the usual shopping lists, Christmas gift lists, weekend preparation lists. She even kept these lists in a special notebook on her dresser in our room. Each item was carefully noted when it was completed or purchased or whatever. She even noted next to each item the completion date and who was responsible if not herself. No one dared to touch this notebook. If anyone touched her or moved her, Suze would explode into a personality that no one wanted to be around. She was a bit OCD about it, and it drove our family crazy at times, but admittedly it meant that trips and other things were well organized. We loved to call Suze the Queen of Lists with lots of fun greetings like "Good morning, Your Highness of the List." Everything was fun. What intrigued me about this conversation between her and Helen was that this list caused them to have such fits of laughter and almost secret whispers. This was not normal. Sure, I'd often heard Helen easily tease Suze about her damn lists, and Suze would just as easily fight her off, but that wasn't it. I had a well-developed sense of intuition when something was wrong. I usually work from home as a forensic accountant, which means I do boring accounting stuff to catch thieves working in companies' finance departments. You would be surprised how creative these people can be to simply steal money from their employers. I've often wondered how much more successful these criminals would be if they simply used their creativity to make an honest living. I'm pretty good in my field, mainly because of this feeling I get when something is wrong. I wouldn't call it extrasensory perception or anything like that, but to me it's a real thing that I rarely ignore. I earn enough for our family to enjoy an above-average standard of living. Suze doesn't have to work, but she spends a lot of her time volunteering at a city charity that provides free medical care and shelter for the homeless. Her role there is to provide secretarial support and coordination to visiting professionals such as doctors and lawyers who work pro bono. I was always proud of her efforts and her selfless attitude towards this task. Her obsession with making lists made her the perfect person for the job. Nothing was left to chance with her preparations, whether it was determining how much bedding to have for the weekend or arranging travel itineraries for visiting doctors. She sometimes needed to travel to other cities to compare their work with ours. These trips, however, only occurred after our two daughters left home to go to university. This is another thing I was proud of about Suze. She was a great mom. My mind wouldn't leave this new list alone. I racked my brain trying to figure out what the list was about, but the only thing that came to mind was Sue's birthday, which was approaching. She was about to turn 40, and it was a big deal for Suze. The exact date of her birthday is August 10th. Mine was only 2 weeks after hers, so part of me wanted to believe that she planned to make our milestone day and transition into official middle age memorable. This idea was partially confirmed in Helen and Sue's next gossip session, when Helen warned Suze that she had little time left to complete her list as she would soon be 40. By the way, I tried to find this mysterious list in a regular notebook, but without success. I know, don't remind me. I'm going as fast as I can. Watch. I'll show you how far I've come, Suze said with excitement. This should be interesting, I thought. Maybe I'll get some clue here. I listened as Suze went through her purse. I heard the sound of lightning and then pages turning. Yeah, so she keeps the list in her purse and not in her usual place, I realized. That in itself was interesting. Now, let's see, Suze said. Wait a minute, what do all these codes mean? Helen interrupted. I'm just being careful, you idiot, Suze replied. If Dave ever finds this, and I suspect he won't because he would never go into a woman's purse, he won't know what it means. Clever, girlfriend, Helen laughed. Okay, number one. It says said So what does said mean? It means to seduce. What? What did she say? Did she say seduce? My mind froze and my sense of intuition began to spin non-stop. My attention focused on the overheard conversation. I must have missed part of it because the next thing I heard was, Suze, did you really seduce him? He's so handsome. Give me the details, you naughty girlfriend. Yes, I agreed. Give me the details. I didn't know if I wanted to hear it, but my dark curiosity and growing sense of rage kept me in place. I was torn. Part of me wanted to go there and run into Suze, but a sense of fear kept me frozen. Well, I had to show him around the offices of the orphanage, so I took a pretty sexy outfit with me and changed into it before picking him up from the airport. Of course, I had to pick him up. I made sure he was sitting in the front passenger seat, putting his overnight bag in the back. You'd be surprised how high the skirt rides up when you drive, and of course I undid 2 buttons on my shirt. Just a tempting hint of the best thing to see. I wanted to know if I was interested. He. And was he? Helen asked in a whisper. Oh yes, I was, Suze answered. Oh yes, I was, answered Suze, my size. He couldn't keep his eyes on the road. He kept finding reasons to look in my direction. He was wearing dark glasses, which made him think I couldn't see where he was looking, but I set up the side mirror so I could see, which attracts his attention. Obviously, he is a lover of breasts and legs because his gaze constantly switched between these parts. Men are so easy to give in, I couldn't believe it was so simple. In general, after this little introduction, he was ready for it. More when we arrived. I kept finding reasons to touch his hands or lightly brush him as we looked around the rooms. One day, I had to bend down in front of him to pick up a stack of legal forms that he had to sign before starting work, so that my breasts lightly touched his hand. I pretended that I was going to leave, but he found many reasons to remain sitting until he apparently came to his senses. Both women burst into laughter again. In the meantime, I had to leave. My heart rate was through the roof, and I could feel my blood pressure playing tricks on my neck. I wanted to throw up right there, but I was able to hold it in before I reached the bathroom that was attached to my office. Trust me, there is nothing quite like the feeling of helplessness and emptiness that comes with a good vomit. They matched the same feelings in my heart at that moment. An endless loop of one-word questions ran through my head, perhaps even out loud. I honestly didn't know. I was in a daze. I sat there for I don't know how long, but eventually the numbness turned to rage. Red, blinding rage. 20 years, 20 fucking years, and she's been doing this to me. Does this to our marriage, our children. After all those years, blood, sweat, and tears, and definitely the joy we put into our marriage, she does it. After the anger subsided in the pit of my stomach, my mind took over again. Questions again. How long? Why? With whom? How did I not notice this? Usually I had a feeling when something was rotten, but not this time. Why? 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 The answer struck me like lightning, right between the eyes, into the brain, and into the center of the heart. Because you loved her and always trusted her. In those other situations, it was people you didn't know and who you already suspected of being dishonest. You never expected that from the love of your life, is what the logical side of my brain said to my now mixed feelings. I heard Helen leave and could already feel Suze fiddling around in the kitchen. Damn, I muttered. I can't be here with her right now. I need to leave while I still can. I need to regain some control so this doesn't turn into complete chaos. I quickly grabbed my briefcase and ran out the back door to my car parked in the front driveway. Sue's always parked hers in the garage. "Where are you going, Dave?" I heard her shout from the kitchen. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. I have to meet with a client. Just realized. I might be late, so don't wait for me. Bye." Nothing unusual. I often met with clients, but usually not at lunchtime, and I usually left after a kiss from my wife and an approximate time of return. I couldn't do it this time. My car itself drove me to the nearest pub, where I somehow found a cozy corner to hide. I don't think I even registered the first 2 beers, but after that I did. I think the fourth began to give me that dull state that reduced my roaring rage to just anger. I looked around. I knew this pub. Sometimes I would come here with clients to discuss their expectations over a quiet beer and a snack. I even knew most of the bartenders. "Hey, Georgie girl, another pint, please." "Of course, Davy. I'll bring it now." I loved this place. "Here's your drink, Davy. Can I sit down?" "Why not? But I have to warn you, Georgie girl, I may not be the best company today. I won't be offended if you go." "That's what I thought, mate. I've seen you around here many times, and I've never seen you try to drown in beer like you are now. Is there something bothering you that I can help with? You know bartenders are required to take a clinical course psychology at Bullshit University before they are allowed to work, right?" I wasn't really listening, so when she added the last part, I just automatically responded, "Really? No, just kidding. But my years of experience listening to anyone and everyone who comes here tells me you're in big trouble. If I've learned anything, it's that drowning in beer doesn't solve anything. So, what are we going to do? Are you going to drown yourself pint by pint, or are you going to share your problem with someone who can give you a different perspective?" I looked at Georgie girl. She looked at me expectantly. What was I going to do? Should I tell this woman my deepest fears, my deepest embarrassment? The third pint beckoned. I brought it to my lips as Georgie girl stood up to leave. "Your choice, Davy." "To hell with it. Sit down, girl." For the next 20 minutes, I cried like a child as I recounted everything I had heard. Somewhere during this time, another beer for me and wine for Georgie girl magically appeared. She oohed and awed at opportune moments to support my story until I could say no more. There was an awkward silence as she finished her wine and looked at me with eyes that seemed to see everything. "Well, damn it," she finally exclaimed. "It definitely smells bad." Were there any signs that she was going down this path? More fighting, less cuddling, less sex, sex just sex, and not lovemaking. I stopped to think. The beer did nothing to help, but the question did wonders for my return to sobriety. When was the last time we had sex? Was it just sex or something more? I couldn't answer this question honestly. Our love life was more spontaneous. We didn't have a set routine or scheduled love sessions. They just happened. I loved it. Since our girls left home, we've certainly had more time on our hands and haven't had to hold back in terms of volume or locations. Have we been doing this less often lately? I looked into Georgie girl's eyes and replied, "I guess it's just been sex lately." Was it just pity sex? Damn, bitch. She was just keeping me satisfied to think about what she wanted to do and with whom. This selfish, untrustworthy bitch. How could she do this to me and our marriage? I finished my pint, but the next one didn't appear. Georgie girl didn't take another wine either. She looked at me and said, "Davy, when a woman reaches 40, her brain begins to become confused. She realizes that her body is getting old. Her ability to bear children is going away or has already gone. Her hormones are changing. You have 2 daughters. You know what a nightmare those periods were for them and everyone around them when their hormones were raging and their bodies were changing. It's not easy for women, you know. I went through this. I know. But that's no excuse for what she does. She still has choices every step of the way. She's not a teenager. She is a mature woman with responsibility, and she has experience that shows she has handled that responsibility well in the past. I'm guessing that you and your daughters survived their childhood and teenage years." "Lord, my daughters. How will this affect them? They truly survived and thrived during their formative years. I thought we were very lucky to have them, and what they achieved and continue to achieve even now. I obviously played my part, but it was mainly Suze who guided their development into confident, outgoing, and academically successful young adults. How could she now turn into this conniving, selfish bitch? And Helen, her best friend, how could she allow such behavior? Isn't a friend's role to help you be your best, and not the best bitch? Georgie girl, I have to admit that Suze was a great mom. Not only was she, but she still is. Her relationship with our daughters is exemplary, and many people comment on how close they are. Damn it, it dawned on me. Do our daughters know about this list? Am I the only one who doesn't know? As the only male in our family, I often felt like the third leg during some of their conversations. No, it cannot be. They couldn't be that insensitive. Or could they? Nothing was beyond the realm of possibility now. Just a few hours ago, I would never have imagined that my love, my friend and lifelong confidant, could so brutally destroy my trust and love. My mind was a mess. I was more confused at this point than before the beer. At least the beer dulled the what-ifs. Davy, you need to find out more information about what's really going on. At this point, she hasn't crossed a line that can't be crossed back. Take some time. Cool down and think about how you can find out more. That's my advice, and it's free. Well, not really. You're paying for my 3 wines along with your 8 pints. See you, mate, you know where I work, so if you need to talk it out again, it might cost you about the same. With these words, she smiled, and I couldn't help but smile with her. Thank you, Georgie girl. Thanks for everything except the bill. I realized that I could not return home. I called home and luckily got an answering machine. Suze must have been in the shower. Hi, just called to say I'm staying with a client overnight. The problems for this account are more than a meeting at the pub can solve. We'll be working all night, and there might be too many beers for me to drive home early in the morning. See you some morning. This happened twice throughout our marriage, and each time it resulted in a large bill, so Suze never really complained. What to do? I needed more information. Georgie girl was right. Maybe I can forgive Suze in time if all she did was seduce the bastard. But that was only the first item on her list. My mind began to freeze again from the implications of the following points. I had to find the damn list. I had to find out who this bastard was that she had so successfully seduced. I knew what I had to do right now. The shelter in question, where Suze spent time, was open 24 hours a day. I was going there to see what my instincts told me. Luckily, it was within walking distance of this pub. Although my mind was focused, the road breathalyzer might have said something different. I really didn't want to contribute to the general revenue of the state government. I wouldn't drive, I just had to get there. I looked like a typical client of this shelter. I was obviously drinking. My eyes and general condition radiated emotional turmoil. My clothes might have been a little too neat, so I took off my shirt and rolled it in the dirt before putting it back on. Nobody knew me there, so I knew I could collect data pretty easily. The receptionist was a little surprised when I walked in. She asked me a few administrative questions. My name, date of birth, current address. I answered everything completely incorrectly and began to have a general conversation with the receptionist. Her badge said Mary. Among the usual questions, I asked if they had a regular doctor. I knew from my work that you always put the most important questions in the middle of a set of simple, unrelated questions. The information I received was that yes, they have a full-time doctor. His name is Gerald Hunt. It turns out he came here 3 times a year and was from Sydney. I didn't want to take advantage of my luck, so I gladly accepted the offered bed and collapsed on it. My tossing and turning didn't make me popular with the rest of the dorm, but I'm sure everyone has seen worse. My exit from there was early, and the return to the pub to collect the car was quick. The cold morning air did wonders for my foggy brain. By the time I got into the car, I was fine. Now home, Suze met me at the door with a worried look on her face. She aimed a kiss at my lips, but I turned away slightly so it landed on my cheek. My kiss was an indifferent air kiss. What did you do last night? Looks like you really screwed up with a client. Not the way you said, bitch, I thought. Instead, he responded with something like, yeah, but at least the potential bill might be worth it. I need to shower and freshen up. I almost ran to the main shower, not our usual one in the bathroom. I had all the necessary things there. Okay, Dave, I'll wait until you're done so we don't break each other's waters. Now I knew when to check her damn list. I took a shower and quickly got dressed. When I heard our bathroom shower turn on, I found her purse and looked for the zipper pocket. I found the list. With shaking hands, I unfolded it and immediately noticed many items, but even worse, I noticed several check marks with notes next to them. My phone camera took 3 pictures so I could put everything back in place before the bitch returned. How life changes, huh? A day ago, I called Suze love, baby, sweetheart. Now she was called bitch, cheater, harlot. The bitch had to work today, which I was glad about. I couldn't stand being in the same house, let alone the same room as her, and I hadn't even read the damn list yet. She left without the usual goodbyes. A thought flashed through my mind. She didn't even notice the absence of the usual farewell words of love. I'll soon find out why. This foreshadowed the end of our marriage and would lead me to the lowest point of my life. The list contained 10 items, all numbered. I noticed that the first 4 points were completed. As I read each item and looked at the ones already completed, my heart sank lower and lower. Who is this woman? When did she start down this path? Did anyone else know? Well, I knew that Helen knew and played along with the bitch. Damn Helen, I always thought we got along well. How can you be so wrong? Where's the beer now? I collapsed as another thought struck me. The last item on the list was completed yesterday. Damn yesterday, June 17. Today is June 18th. Today, she was going to do point 5 today. What could S mean? Maybe it's shorthand for sex. According to the list, first she seduced, then T. What does T stand for? I used my analytical mind, which I thought would never work again after this blow to the head and heart. The points became more and more involved as the numbers increased. At first it was just seduction, no physical contact at all other than hand touching and occasional chest rubbing. I tried to think of all the T words associated with seduction and sex. Small list, but it's a start. I decided on touch. So, 2 days after seducing the bastard, the bitch was playing touching. The third point seemed more obvious. The next day after the touching sessions, the bitch gave the bastard pleasure, creature. The fourth point puzzled me for some time. Now number 5. Not completed yet. Not finished yet. Even if she doesn't do this, our marriage is ruined. If I guessed correctly and S is for sex, she was going to have sex with that bastard today. No wonder she left without noticing that I didn't say love you or have a nice day. She was too busy thinking about how good it would be to have sex with the bastard today. The sofa took my decline. I moaned. I cried. I screamed. I screamed like a child. My mind was confused. Real confusion. The bitch is cheating on me today. I ran, tripped, and rushed around the house in a blind rage. I went outside and destroyed the flower garden in the backyard, tearing out every plant that the bitch and I had so carefully nurtured over the years. We loved this garden, but now for me it symbolized the complete destruction of our marriage. When I finally caught my breath, all that was left was a complete pile of uprooted plants, torn flowers, and thorn bushes. I looked at it with sadness as a symbol of our marriage. I slowly unzipped and urinated on the pile of green trash. Well, bitch, you pissed on our marriage, so it's only fair that I piss on it. Surprisingly, this act of destruction calmed my mind enough for me to return to my office. I knew I needed to get my affairs in order before the coming storm. I knew enough about shady financial transactions to hide our money and investments. The problem was our house. It was paid. Usually, this is not a problem. However, here in good old Australia, neither spouse can receive all the joint assets. We are too fair to place the blame for the breakdown of a marriage on one of the spouses. It was always a separation without guilt. The house was a problem, but money was another matter. As I knew, You can always hide money so that no court will find it. Or if he does, it will be too late. I have been busy because all this dubious activity takes time. Damn, I'm going to have to bide my time. I also needed to get irrefutable proof that my wife, that bitch, was cheating. I couldn't start watching now. It was necessary to appear that I was not in the know until I had time to rebuild the assets. I also needed to deal with the bastard without anyone knowing it was me. It's time to act. I left the garden as it was and went to the shopping center. When I returned 3 hours later, I immediately called the police to report the vandalism that allegedly occurred while I was gone. The two police officers were very professional, taking fingerprints, asking a million rote questions, and vigorously taking down notes. Just kidding about the notes. Nobody writes that fast these days. They simply made sure their voice recorder was working adequately. Great. They found the whole situation very strange, since I could not give a motive for such an attack. They promised to question my wife later and continue the investigation. Of course, I thought, but I thanked them out loud for their time and they left. The visit to the shopping center was not in vain. I spoke to our bank manager, a nice lady. We have had many business contacts in the past, as I was instrumental in exposing a corrupt bank clerk in this very branch. Mr. Hartwood, Dave, what a surprise. How's the family? How can I help you today? Any more rotten wood that needs fixing? No, Janet, quite the opposite. I'd like to refinance the house. Really, Dave? How much of your share would you like to refinance? The latest estimate is that you already own 99%. The latest estimate is about $2 million. Janet, it depends on what the bank agrees to do. How much share should I leave with you? You know I can handle any payments. My business is booming, especially in the last year. What do you think? Wait a minute, Dave. I'll call the head office now. She apologized while making the call. I politely looked away as she explained the situation to her superiors at the head office. Dave, we can refinance up to 80% of the last appraisal, since it was just 6 months ago. According to this data, you can cash out the amount of $1,600,000. This amount will be ready in a week. You and Suze must also sign the necessary documents and return them to me by tomorrow. Is this possible? Of course. How long will it take to prepare the documents? It's as easy as pie. Everything is standard. Just the amount is unusual, but since it has already been approved by the head office, everything is in order. You can receive a bank check for this amount by next Tuesday. May I ask, why do you need this now? I mean, you're approaching middle age, aren't you? Okay, I can't say for sure, other than I have a very good investment opportunity in front of me, and I would be a fool to pass it up. I expect to double my money within 3 weeks. All I can do is caution you, Dave. As an accountant, you know that if something seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. Thanks for that, Janet. I'll take that into consideration. Also, you'll notice that I've withdrawn quite a bit of our available cash and bonds. I can tell you about this matter. Suze and I are celebrating our 40th birthday soon, and I want to organize a trip around the world now that the kids are at university. That's wonderful, Dave. You make such a great couple. Okay, I'll get the paperwork ready and hope to see you tomorrow. I also visited a former accountant with whom I had done business in my work. Yes, he was just as dishonest as everyone else, but he managed to avoid prison due to family obligations. He was surprised to see me and more than a little suspicious until I explained my needs and his payment for services rendered. I opened an online investment account. I have arranged for all available funds to be transferred from my retirement account to this investment account. I also warned the fund managers that a fairly large amount of money would be deposited into this account next week, and that my money manager, that is, the dishonest accountant, had permission to withdraw any amount for reinvestment. I returned home satisfied with what I had accomplished in such a short time. My wallet and pockets were stuffed with cash, a total of $55,000, all in $100 bills. After the police left, I Googled the bastard. Yes, he really was from Sydney. His Facebook profile showed his beautiful wife and child on Bondi Beach enjoying life. Typical Facebook images of all the best moments in people's lives. I compared his Facebook profile to his violent actions towards me, but more surprisingly towards his wife and child. How could he? He worked as a consulting physician in a fairly prestigious medical practice. My thoughts of revenge began to materialize around a simple idea. If he's doing this to my wife, he must have a past. Once he has changed, he will always change. We need to collect more information. I wasn't going to let this point be checked off without a fight. I found the shelter number and called. The receptionist answered. Of course, I was John Smith. Hello? I was wondering if Suze Hartwood is there today. If not, maybe I could talk to Dr. Hunt. Of course, Mr. Smith. Both are working today. Please wait. I'll try to connect you to Suze first. I waited and waited. Finally, the bitch answered, a little out of breath. Yes, this is Suze. Who says please? Hello? Hello? I answered in the most disguised voice through a handkerchief. Mrs. Hartwood, is Dr. Buddy's Hunt with you? I need to give him an urgent message. Message from his wife, Claire, and daughter, Augustine. This is a medical emergency. Please put him through. Hello, hello? I heard a loud gasp followed by a scream. Are you married, you cheating bastard? Get out! Get out! And to think I was going to sleep with you. Get out! Are you still here, Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? Damn! The bitch dared to call the bastard a cheater. I hung up the phone laughing like crazy, but the laughter soon turned to tears. Tears, like rain, washed away the last remnants of dignity. They were going to cuckold me, but I managed to thwart the plans of this bitch at the last moment. But she was still going to do it. The bitch planned to cuckold me without considering me at all. It was just as bad as actually doing it. Once again, I realized that our marriage was dead. Dinner at the Hartwood house that evening was interesting. Helen joined us. Sometimes she came over to have girls' nights with the bitch. She didn't seem to mind at all about leaving her husband at home. There was silence around the table. The bitch was unusually quiet and seemed very interested in the green peas on her plate. Even Helen noticed that something was wrong. The topic of the destroyed garden was raised, but it caused almost no reaction. What? I thought. We spent hours in this damn garden, and now she's not interested at all. I brought up the topic of refinancing my accounting business, to which the bitch muttered something incomprehensible. She clearly wasn't listening to what I was saying. I handed over the documents and pointed out where she needed to sign. Luckily, Helen was able to witness our signatures. She was as attentive to what she signed as the bitch. Wonderful. Everything went easier than I thought. I quickly put away the documents and put things in order. I wanted them to discuss their business while I was in my office. You girls obviously need to chat, so I'll disappear into my office and take care of business too. Bye, Helen. Was the only answer I received from both of them. As soon as I left, they started talking. What's wrong, Suze? Why are you so depressed? Today was supposed to be the big day for the deal with Gerald. What happened? Oh, hell, you won't believe how bad it was. We started making out. We were both naked, and I was horny as a goat. So what went wrong? Everything sounds great so far. I'm starting to get horny listening to this. Tell me more. Well, like I said, we were almost ready. And then the office phone rang. I had to answer because everyone knew I was there. It would be weird if I didn't answer. It was this damn man who wanted to talk to Gerald. He said he had a medical emergency about Gerald's wife and daughter. He told me he was single, and like an idiot, I believed him. What a lying bastard. Oh, damn, Suze, that's disgusting. But isn't that a little hypocritical? I mean, you're married, and look what you're doing. Wow, Helen, I thought. At least she has some sort of moral compass. But Helen, I told him I was married. He knew it from the beginning. He even tried to belittle Dave a few times, which I thought was sexy at the time. I might even encourage him sometimes. Yes, I know, Suze. Now I understood why Helen had no hesitation in advising a bitch to cheat. She was also a cheater. I wonder if her husband knew about this. Plans for revenge filled my head. How I managed to stay there listening to all this garbage without completely losing my temper was probably a testament to how the whole thing had made me so desensitized. Nothing else could be worse. I'd been through so much betrayal by the bitch that any new information just added to an already huge pile of crap. This time my eavesdropping was different. This time I had a working voice recorder. My visit to the electronics store at the mall allowed me to purchase a state-of-the-art recording device that is guaranteed to record even the faintest sounds. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I knew I couldn't use this as evidence because I didn't officially know about the bitch's cheating yet. However, Helen's husband might be interested in listening to this part of the conversation. Other financial activities needed to be completed before I officially found out. And what did you do, Suze? I got rid of the bastard. That's what I did. Now I need to find another way to complete this item on my list. I'll have to speed up the earlier items with someone else. But Suze, you don't have to do all the earlier points. Could you just skip to point 5? True, but that wouldn't be as much fun, would it? Now help me choose another man. You seem to know them all. Is there anyone you can suggest? Well, yeah, I had an affair with Roger Aldridge. You know, that lawyer who works every Friday. He should be good for you. I really missed him after I stopped seeing him. I didn't feel my husband for 2 months. Yummy, it sounds great. Okay, I'll start working on it tomorrow. This bitch has to pay, I thought. And her friend too. Containing myself at home for the next few days was a task that tested me to the limit. I managed to maintain some kind of semblance of intelligent conversation to avoid arousing suspicion from the bitch about what I knew. It was supposed to be like this for some time. Meanwhile, I visited a travel agency and found out about the most expensive round-the-world cruise, available just in time for this bitch's birthday. The next day he had to leave Sydney. This was important. And so, the cruise took place exactly the way I wanted. It left Sydney the day after the bitch's birthday, is non-refundable, and has a 90-day validity. The perfect cruise. Besides, it was worth a little less than the $55,000 I had in cash. It was a luxury room. The bitch's birthday was approaching. As much as it upset me, I threw a huge party at the local golf club. It was the most luxurious room in the area. The bitch didn't know anything about it, but I managed to invite as many people as I could, and of course everyone got paid in full. Her family, my family, her work colleagues, and the same number of invited specialists from her work. How much was available? Of course, Helen and her husband were also invited. Our daughters were thrilled that I was organizing such a big event for their mother. The party was going well. Everyone tried to outdo each other while enjoying the free drinks offered. The main meal was about to be served when it was time for the obligatory speeches. All the glasses were filled in the hope that they would make the speeches more pleasant. My parents started by saying how proud they were of my family. They were impressed by the way our daughters kept their heads up and moved towards a secure future. They were proud of the stability and love they saw between Susie and me. Her parents gave an almost identical speech next. Our daughters followed next. Both valued the way they were raised, especially their close relationship with their mother. They mentioned me, but not in such enthusiastic terms. Did I need to worry about this? I'll find out soon. Inevitably, it was my turn to stand and speak. I started by thanking everyone for being there. I went on to talk about how important 40th birthdays are to some people, and how they use this excuse to do stupid things like violently attack the gym or spend a ton of money surgically reshaping their body. This caused quite a few laughs and glances in certain directions. I then continued talking about the bitch I called Susan. This raised some eyebrows. Everyone knew that she hated that name with a passion. I know many of you have known Susan for quite some time, some much longer than I have. But we all know one thing about the Queen of Lists, don't we? Her Majesty, the Queen of Lists, just loves making lists. This sent the crowd into hysterics, especially when one of our daughters brought out a crown made from many lists taped together. They made a grand show, bowing low and loudly saying, "Your Majesty." I then activated the audiovisual system in the hall. I showed several slides of the various lists this bitch has made over the years. This resulted in the bitch being thoroughly embarrassed and the entire audience bursting into fits of laughter. I showed pictures online of the cruise I purchased. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know the depth of love I had for this woman. Some of those who were actually listening raised their eyebrows when they saw the time pass, but didn't make a sound. There were oohs and ahs and lots of comments about how cute it was. I've been racking my brain for weeks about the right 40th birthday gift, you know, the one that some people went crazy over. Sue, I came across this cruise. Susan had always wanted to go on a cruise like this, but we never had the funds. Thank you, girls. I looked pointedly at our daughters, who suddenly pouted. The bitch burst into tears and said, I love you. Last night, I came up with a clever way to present this gift to Susan. The most creative way I came up with was to hide the tickets where Susan would find them tonight. I decided to hide it in her purse. Yes, Susan, hold that purse up for everyone to see. The crowd took up the chant, wait, Susan, wait, Susan. Susan demonstrated this effectively to applause and cheers. Now it was my turn to take a dramatic pause. I should have taken drama classes. Guess what I found? The crowd chanted, what? What? Again and again. There were two women in the crowd who were trying to disappear into their seats, becoming paler and paler. Another list, I shouted sharply, and here it is. The bitch had truly found her voice, soft as it was. No, Dave, no. Helen, the bitch's assistant, also covered her mouth with her hand and joined the bitch in the chorus. No. Our daughters, much to my displeasure, also chanted no. Now I knew. They all knew about it except me. I switched to the next slide and waited. Most of the crowd looked at this questioningly, not understanding what it all meant. Ladies and gentlemen, I called this list the Doomsday List. You'll soon understand why. Please pay attention when I explain the code you see in front of you. You see, this list is in the code, and I just found this list last night. Let me explain. On June 12, Susan seduced one of the doctors at work. This doctor's name is Gerald Hunt, and he happens to be here this evening. Hello, Gerald, and hello, Mrs. Hunt. By the way, means another person. There was a heated discussion at Hunt's table. Then, just 2 days later, Susan was playing grudges with the same Gerald Hunt, again at work. A heated discussion at Hunt's table escalated into a shouting match. After this, the very next day, Susan satisfied the good doctor. Now the main event is in 2 days. You may have already guessed that the letter stands for sex. This time it was supposed to be repeated with the doctor who came to see him, but apparently Susan found out that the good doctor had a wife and child. I'm so sorry, so sad, Doc. Apparently Susan hates scammers, so she kicked your ass. Go figure it out. A scammer who hates scammers. However, this point had to be fulfilled, so Roger was the lucky one. Roger Aldridge. Hi, Rog. I must tell you all that good old Rog has a good reputation among the ladies. He tries as many women as possible, married or single. How is Susan different from Helen? Come on, Rog, don't be shy. We're all adults here. Just a number out of 10 for everyone, if you will. Poor old Roger chose a million shades of red and purple. However, his date for the night just turned red. Right before she gave him the hardest slap in the face, followed by a crushing blow between his legs. Roger is out for the count. Helen's husband offered Helen the same treatment. 2 people on the floor. I hope someone called 000. By this time, most of the crowd sat in deathly silence. Many people gasped for a moment upon hearing the explanation. The only sound that broke the silence was crying and sobbing. The crying came from the bitch, who was holding her head in her hands, and the sobs came from both sets of parents, hers and mine. I saw my father shaking his head and hugging my mother tightly. The bitch's parents looked paler and paler, sobbing loudly. I continued. On August 10, Susan, through clients at her work, agreed to have sex with a retired black star. Oh, by the way, Susan, he is confirmed to be HIV positive. Positive. Well, apparently that's how it is on the website. I hope everything works out for you. Perhaps you might need to undergo urgent STD testing in the future. The second to last point was that Susan had arranged to have sex with another client at the shelter where she worked. Her name is Amanda Quinn. She's here tonight, too. Wave to everyone, Amanda. Everyone takes a good look at her. This is the man Susan had sex with. By now, everyone was talking and out of breath. Quite a strange sound when breathing inside the hall. At that moment, my daughters jumped up and shouted, "Dad, stop that." Mom had the right to get these things out of her system before she turned 40. Stop tormenting her. I turned to my daughters. Our daughters, I lost my daughters. They suddenly realized that everyone was looking at them and shaking their heads. Some were so outraged by their outbursts that they shouted, "Shame on you, bitches. How could you support this behavior?" This was followed by a quick fall back to their seats. "Mr. Smythe, please." "Susan, Mr. Smythe has some papers that you can read and sign. Hire a lawyer." The noble Mr. Smythe walked up to the bitch and asked, "Are you Susan Hartwood, Mrs. Susan Hartwood?" The bitch managed to whisper, "Yes." "You've been served." The bitch fell to the floor, wailing and sobbing, and between sobs she screamed, "No." At that moment, the detectives who were waiting at the door entered. One read the bitch her rights and immediately handcuffed her. "Mrs. Orso Hartwood, you are accused of soliciting a person for sexual conduct. In addition, Mr. Devolwright, the accountant for the homeless shelter where you work, has some allegations of financial impropriety. We will now escort you to the police watch house, where you will be charged more formally and where you will need to surrender your passport. Please follow us." By this time, the room was noisy and couples were leaving in droves. Soon only my parents, my relatives, and daughters remained. "We're so sorry, son," my parents said. With tears in their eyes, but with determined eyes, they looked into my eyes. "Don't do anything stupid, son. You know where we are when you need us." Then they left. My relatives were too embarrassed to even form a coherent sentence. They shook their heads and hugged me. Then they left. My daughters didn't know where to look. "Could you let Mom have this, Dad?" She had been thinking about it and planning it for months. "It was cruel how you treated her needs. We don't believe you would do that to her." I looked at both of my daughters. Their revelation became the final nail in my heart. I fell to my knees and sobbed. "I don't believe what your mother planned and carried out was normal. I thought I raised you better. Do you understand the pain she caused me with her betrayal? I trusted your mom. I loved your mother with every fiber of my being. I thought she was with me the whole time. It was now obvious that I was not good enough for her. She felt like she needed more. She never trusted me enough to discuss her needs with me, her life partner, the man she chose to spend her life and her love with. We raised you two together, but now I realize my input was ignored. I'm sorry to hear you feel that way." One last sob, and I stood up. "When you realize what you have been indulging in, come and talk to me again. Until then, I will not look for you or talk to you. Goodbye." I left them standing silent in this room. The door slamming behind me became the point in this sentence. My sentence of 20 years of dedication, love, trust, and support has just taken effect. Well, the cruise was a great success. What a pity that this bitch couldn't go with me. But to travel abroad, you need to have a passport with you, and she had to give it up when she was arrested. The day of the divorce trial finally arrived. My lawyer used the services of a very good lawyer. However, the bitch had to be content with a court-appointed judge. He was a handsome young man, fresh from a bar course and full of enthusiasm. However, for all his energy, he completely lacked experience. I advised my lawyer to be lenient with him as he had a long career ahead of him. I actually got a smile from this. "Now let me get this right, Mrs. Wilson Hartwood. You decided, with the blessing of your two daughters and the advice of your best friend Helen, to create a list of debauchery increasing activities, all of a sexual nature, which you needed to complete before you turned 40. Am I right?" "Yes, but, and you haven't discussed any of this with your husband before?" "No." And why didn't you discuss them, I mean? Because I didn't think he would agree for me to do it. Why do you think that your husband of 20 years, your husband who trusted you, supported you, loved you unconditionally, why would he not agree to these cruel acts of infidelity, Mrs. Hartwood? I just thought I deserved it. I needed to do it. It was my right to do what I wanted with my body. He didn't own me, came the confident answer. So you stayed at home throughout your married life with Mr. Hartwood. Did he ever, in all that time, give you any reason to humiliate him, to cuckold him? I suppose that's what it's called. Did he ever treat you? Has he ever been cruel or abusive in any way during this time? Hesitantly, the answer came, no. Has he ever gone above and beyond to make you feel loved, appreciated, like you were the center of his world all this time? Well, yes, Dave always did this, but, the bitch began to cry. Oh, Dave, what have I done? I'm so sorry. There are no further questions for this witness, my barrister said. Divorce was obvious, but the issue of division of property had to be resolved. My barrister told the judge, Your Honor, there should be no disagreement here. My client, Mr. Benda Hartwood, has agreed to the division of all property in half, since the two children of the marriage have reached the age of majority and are no longer dependent on both parents. The amount allocated to Mrs. Sulls Hartwood is $2,050. Protest, Your Honor. Mr. Cod Hartwood ran a thriving accounting business. They had over $50,000 in cash and investments, and a nearly fully paid-off house valued at over $2 million. The minimum amount that could be given to Mrs. Hartwood is $1,025,000, said the green lawyer. Could you explain how you came up with this amount? The judge asked my barrister. Of course, Your Honor. First, all cash and investments were liquidated to pay for a non-refundable round-the-world cruise that Mr. Gizzy Hartwood arranged for his wife and himself. Unfortunately, due to arrest, Mrs. Hartwood was unable to go with Mr. Dees Hartwood. As I said, the trip was non-refundable, so that money was lost whether Mr. Hartwood went on the cruise or not. As for the value of the house, it is certainly a story of misfortune and unwise decisions. Mr. Hartwood liquidated the lion's share of the house's equity. Cash, believing that a mining startup called Oslith was a safe short-term investment. All the reports coming to him from his investment accountant seemed to indicate that the company was on the verge of a major announcement that would triple the price of K's shares. Unfortunately, but it happens too often, the company's share price fell to 5 cents per share when it was revealed that the original estimate of the quality of the ore was wrong. This made the initial investment of almost $16 million seem almost insignificant, approximately $300. Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. South Hartwood never agreed to refinance the house for this purchase. Your Honor, the relevant documents have already been produced. It is clear that the refinancing documents were signed by Mrs. Prez Hartwood, and my esteemed colleague may wish to note that every page of the document was witnessed by none other than Mrs. Hartwood's best friend, Helen. My client did nothing wrong, Your Honor. In fact, all the actions taken by Mr. Hartwood were honest and decent. The same cannot be said about Mrs. Hartwood and her daughters, as well as her so-called best friend. As for a thriving business, when word got out that Mr. Bull Hartwood had made such a stupid investment mistake, his clients left him in droves. I'm afraid the value of his business has dropped to almost zero. The judge examined the papers in front of him. He hesitated a little before announcing that the marriage was dissolved and that I must pay the bitch the amount indicated in my lawsuit, an impressive sum of $2,050. I left the court knowing that my life with the bitch was now over. I could look forward to a new life. There were certainly quite a few single ladies who had discovered the joys of my cruise suite after a night of dancing and fun, who wished they could have spent more time with me. My daughters, it was up to them. If they truly thought that what their mother did was okay, I wasn't looking forward to watching their journey into the world of serious relationships and marriage with joy. Maybe someday they'll talk to me. The last I heard of Helen was that she and her husband had separated. The consultations only highlighted more unresolvable differences. It appears that divorce was the most likely outcome. I also held on to my Oslith shares because there were rumors that the report that caused the share price to drop so sharply was false and was spread by a certain accountant who narrowly avoided jail time for alleged abuse. A new accurate report could cause the stock price to rise again to a level where my shares would be worth $48 million. My business gradually picked up again, although it never reached its previous heights. This gave me more time to chat with certain ladies from the cruise, however. Well, the bitch is unlucky that we are now divorced and that she signed a document agreeing to the division of property. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.